Welcome, everybody. So good to see you all. Again, we are going to get started in just a moment. If you can, please just go ahead and rename yourself with your full name and the state where you're joining us from. We love to see folks from all over the country and sometimes even the world. And then you will need something to write with and a piece of paper. So go ahead and grab those supplies if you don't already have them nearby. Great to see some familiar faces. Thank you guys so much for joining today. We'll get started in just a moment. Again, if you are just joining us, welcome. We are going to get started, and there is just two things you need to do if you haven't already. Those are to, one, please rename yourself with your full name and the state from which you're joining, and you do need something to write with and a piece of paper. Okay, let's get started. I am Victoria James. I'm the Director of Professional Learning at MindSpark Learning. I have my email listed here and will include it again at the end. Love to connect with you all, and I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions you may have after our snippet today. So please do be in touch. All right, if you can't hear us, go ahead and navigate to your Zoom toolbar and click the little up arrow next to your microphone, and make sure you have the built-in output internal speakers option checked. So we should all be good. If you do need help though, please chat my colleague Kiki or I in the chat, and we will get your tech issues sorted. All right. So MindSpark Learning is a national education nonprofit, and we are driven by the belief that the most impactful path to evolving education is through folks like us, through educators. We believe that some of the biggest problems facing our society and our world today can be solved through education. So here's our agenda. It is going to go by really quick. We don't have much time together today, but we do want to give you all a great taste of what futures thinking is and how we as educators are futurists. So let's go ahead, let's get into it. All right, so what I would like all of us to do now is to imagine, use our imaginations that next year we're moving to Hawaii, okay? I want you to picture it in your mind. All right, how would that make you feel about moving to Hawaii? Beautiful beaches, nice weather, fresh fruits and vegetables all around, flowers, wildlife. Would that make you potentially happier, that thought of moving to Hawaii next year? Think about that. Go ahead and type into the chat. How would you feel about the prospect of moving to Hawaii next year? Maybe anxiety provoking for some of us, it may be exciting. Go ahead and type into the chat. Excited, okay, thank you, Suzanne. Heather says, yeah, it's too expensive. That was my first thought, right? Cost of living is very high. Everything's imported if it's not grown there. Thank you, Tom, yep. Love to be near water, awesome. Be excited, exciting, yeah. Maui, yeah, that would be beautiful. Awesome. Okay, thank you all. So what we just did is we engaged in a mini futures thinking exercise. And as humans, it's a unique skill for us. Not many species can think about and plan for the future. The same thing goes for the past. That is unique to us as human beings. And it's sort of the first introduction that I wanted to present you all to this content, this discipline called futures thinking. So I'm curious to hear from you all. What do you think about the future? So go ahead and take a moment and read over some of these terms on the screen. And when you're ready, go ahead and type in a few of the terms into the chat that best describe how you think about the future. Okay, so take a moment, read through all of these terms that are on the screen, and then when you're ready, type into the chat which words best describe how you think about the future. Okay. Heather, you shared unsure, trailblazer, open-minded, determined. Thank you for sharing. Tom, you say trailblazing, tourist, optimist. Okay, thank you. Terry, optimist, ambiguous, unsure. Awesome. Hillary, unsure, optimist, determined. Fantastic. If you haven't already typed into the chat those terms that best describe how you think about the future, please continue to do so. I see plenty more results and responses coming in. This is great. Okay. All right. So thank you guys for sharing that. I want to kind of share with you guys this phrase that I think at first can sound kind of outlandish, that as educators, we shape the future. And I think this maybe initially sounds quite the claim, but think about it. In our classrooms, we are looking at the world's future doctors, lawyers, educators, judges, technologists, right? Investors, venture capitalists. We are helping shape and mold our students because we know that down the line, they are going to inherit the earth, inherit the economy, inherit the country. So we are literally working with the future every single day in our classrooms, okay? I also want to just briefly touch on the fact that we know that some people have access, right, to power and privilege and resources, and others don't. But if your initial knee-jerk reaction to this concept of futures thinking, that we as educators shape the future and an individual's actions can, dramatically impact the outcome of the future, of the world, sounds a bit elitist, like that was my knee-jerk reaction, I want to just tell you that it's not. Right? As educators, we are providing our students not only with access to content, to social emotional learning skills and opportunities, but also, if we've seen how students have really kind of risen up over the past, couple weeks and months, and getting engaged in helping to drive decisions and, put pressure on folks in power currently to make changes for the world that they want to see that does not yet exist. That's futures thinking. That is shaping the future, right? Adrienne Marie Brown, who's an emergent strategist, she basically shares that, all organizing and all activism is futures thinking because we are fighting and advocating for a future that does not yet exist, but we know it's possible. All right, so what on earth is futures thinking? You might be wondering. So futures thinking, it is similar to equity-centered design thinking, which you may be familiar with previously. If not, no big deal. This image on the screen, I think, does a great job of kind of juxtaposing the two. So design thinking looks at the intersections of people, business, and technology. It is much more focused in its approach. Whereas futures thinking really takes into account the macro forces at play between people, business, and technology. It takes a much broader view. So those big macro forces are the social, the economic, the political, and the environmental. So futures thinking is a living process. It invites ongoing observation, pattern recognition, and conversation. We have to engage with diverse audiences if we really are going to have the most broadly informed vision of what the possible futures look like in front of us. We can't just be, focused on just one group or one macro force in and of itself if we are to accurately recognize those patterns, those trends, and try to read the tea leaves. It starts with an inside-out perspective, and it really does require input from multiple perspectives. So in our schools, we think of maybe, our staff, our colleagues, our educators, and our students, but this is bigger than that, right? It is in addition to families, it is community members, right? Stakeholders, folks who we don't maybe initially think of as being involved in this process. All right, so let's do another futures thinking activity. It's the year 2030. Every community in the United States is now equipped with what? Fill in the blank. Go ahead. Don't think too hard on this, please. That's not the point. Go ahead and type into the chat what your response to this prompt would be. Every community in the United States is now equipped with what? Don't overthink it. Let's see what we have in the chat. Internet access and air conditioning. Okay. Thank you, Heather. Yes. What are some other responses? Flying cars, love it, Minnie, thank you. Wi-Fi for free, okay. Free healthcare, Wi-Fi, internet access, and smart cars, thank you, Terry. Meal plans for all families for all 3 meals, awesome, thank you, Lauren. Hillary says internet access, great, okay. Thank you all, yes. So this is a futures thinking activity where you are just being asked to come up with a response to a prompt. Okay, so let's try another one. The mayor of your city just sent this tweet. Okay, it's 2030, fast forward 10 years. What did the mayor of your city just tweet? Go ahead and fill in the blank. Again, don't overthink it. What comes to mind? It's the year 2030. The mayor of your city just sent this tweet. Mardi Gras will be a week long. Okay, no more taxes here. I would like to move there, Julian. To conserve water, very important. Thank you, Terry. What are some other responses? All city conference scheduled for 7 p.m. Join us. Yeah, access is really important. We'll have a Zoom block party this Friday. Help your neighbor. Great. Thank you all. If you haven't typed in your response yet, please do so. But I just want to ask us to do one more of these futures thinking prompts. Okay. So MindSpark Learning, we are in Colorado and we are very much attuned to what's happening in Denver Public Schools. So students in Denver Public Schools just proposed the following policy measure. What did DPS students just propose? Go ahead and type into the chat. I'm not sure, Megan, if your response was to the previous one or to this one, but I love the idea of a community garden party. Half-hour recess after lunch, yes. I remember my 9th grade students would ask for recess sometimes. I would just be like, we're in high school, but I wish you could. Equal education for all, thank you, Tom. No homework and no grades, only authentic evaluations. Love it, Julian, thank you. 15-minute self-room break, I hear you, Minnie, yes. Yep, no homework, okay. Thank you all. Equal opportunities, yes, very important. Okay, so really, thank you all for engaging in these. And if you didn't respond yet, please still type into the chat. But the purpose and the value behind these kinds of activities, these future thinking exercises are, you know, the process of thinking about your response is just as valuable, if not more valuable than whatever you type into the chat. Right? It's getting us to build our futures thinking muscles to start to consider, okay, what do I think Denver Public School students would propose to, you know, the state government or to the school board in the city? You know, what would the mayor be tweeting about 10 years from now? You know, and that is a really valuable exercise to start to consider, you know, what could happen in the future and what are the possibility and the different versions of the future that are in front of us. And secondly, what actions, decisions, and moves can we make to figure out, well, what's the best version of the future for us, for our industry, for our students, for our classrooms, and what decisions can we make to try to bring about that version of the future? So the next activity we are going to do is to figure out for ourselves, take a little personality quiz and figure out our views of the future, okay? So in your piece of paper, you should have your writing utensil and a piece of paper. If you want to do it on your computer as well, that's fine, but make sure you have somewhere to record this. So what I'm going to do is read these 2 statements, and I would like you to record on your end, which do you most agree with? You can only choose one, okay, regarding your view of the future. All right, so you're choosing A or B, all right? So first one is, what will happen in the future is mostly set and will follow the path we are already on. That's option A. Or the future holds many possibilities and is not yet determined, okay? Record that. So pick A or B and write that down. Write one of those letters down, okay? All right, let me take a quick look at the chat. I want to make sure I'm not missing any questions. Terry, you said B, okay. All right, awesome. Thank you guys for typing into the chat. A lot of consensus. This is interesting. Okay. All right. So you have your letter chosen for your views of the future. All right. Now I'm going to show you a new slide. 2 more statements, okay? Same thing. Let me read the first one. we each don't have much individual influence over what the futures will be. Or we each have a great deal of individual influence over how the future will be. Take a moment. If you need to reread these to yourself, go ahead. But when you're ready, record which of these statements you most agree with, okay? Either C or D. You can only pick one statement on this slide, okay? All right, let me look at the chat. Okay, wow, okay, lots of consensus. This is fascinating. This is so interesting. Okay, all right, so you're probably curious as to what your results are. So here we go. If you scored AC, combination A and C, you are an observer. If you scored AD, you are a navigator. If you scored BC, you're an explorer. And if you scored a BD, you are a map maker. So the descriptions for these futures thinking personality types will be put into the chat in just a moment. So if you go ahead and click that link that Kiki just put into the chat, it will take you to a Google Doc where you can see all of the descriptions. But it looked like we had a ton of consensus. So I'm going to go ahead and read out what you guys scored. It looks like the vast majority of folks scored as a map maker, okay? So I'm going to read that for us, and you guys can find that in the Google Doc link that Kiki shared. But map makers are often imaginative, optimistic, strong leaders who are ready to take charge. Okay, so we've got a lot of a lot of folks on the call who identified that way. Thank you. Kiki just put into the chat the description of map makers, and I think this is pretty interesting stuff to consider. So what we're going to have you do is we are going to put you into breakout rooms for about 4 minutes. Okay, and you all are going to kind of discuss with each other your reactions to your futures thinking personality type. Okay, so the vast majority of us scored map maker. So what I would like you to do in those breakout rooms is you are going to look at your view of the future and compare it with those other views, okay? So again, you're going to have basically 2 prompts that you need to address in your breakout rooms. And if Kiki, if you could put these into the chat so they have them to take with them when they go into breakout rooms, that would be much appreciated. But what I first want you all to do in those breakout rooms is consider how your view of the future might be helpful to you as you make choices about the future, and specifically what about it might be helpful, okay? Secondly, how might that perspective also be helpful to you when thinking about the future? So consider the opposite, right? If you scored as a map maker, how might the explorer perspective be helpful? Okay, so kind of compare and contrast. You're gonna have 4 minutes in those breakout rooms, and then we will come back. One person from each group should be ready to share out. Are there any questions before you all go into those breakout rooms? No? All right. We will see you back here in 4 minutes. All right. Welcome back, everyone. I know some of us are still returning from breakout rooms. 4 minutes isn't a lot of time, but thank you all for engaging in your breakout room discussions. Let's just hear from, one or two folks as to how your version or view of the future might be helpful to you as you make choices about the future. Basically, let's hear from one person. You can unmute yourself or share into the chat how your view of the future can be helpful to you. Now, this is a lot of futures thinking content all at once.
Well, I can report, we did a lot of socializing. So
okay, that's
we talked about where we were from, but we did get the first question. And we had 2 map makers and 1 explorer. And we did agree that persistence is very, very important, because as you're moving ahead with plans and programs, there will be failures, there'll be stumbling, moments that you'll want to give up, but persistence will carry you through. And that's something where the explorer also brings that, because the explorer knows things will happen. So that same quality, we never really answered the second question, so I'm making that up for the group, but just to give you an idea.
That's okay. Love that. Thank you so much for sharing, Tom. I definitely agree. There's very much like everybody has a strength and everybody's view of the future. It's okay that there are different perspectives on it, right? Some people are more introverted. Some people are more extroverted, right? Some people are comfortable in front of crowds. Some people aren't. It really just, it's not so much a one is stronger or better than the other. They all balance each other and they intermingle and overlap as well.
And just to give you a little sidebar, Kathy was from New York, Poughkeepsie, and Yvonne was from Trinidad. So it was a nice range of people.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I see Hillary in the chat wrote, we focused on the optimism and possibilities with the idea of how there are so many ways for things to go well, even through the challenges. Yes, would agree with that. Thank you, Hillary. Okay. You guys did a great job. All right. So we're going to just move very quickly now because I do want to make sure we have time to do the evaluation at the end. This quote I love from Oscar Wilde. He says that without order, nothing exists. Without chaos, nothing evolves. So I think this moment in time has forced so many of us to, you know, evolve overnight, take our classrooms virtual overnight, figure out ways in which we can adapt and change to respond to the challenges and the obstacles facing us moving forward. And as you guys did in your assessments, these different views of the future, there are different strengths for each of them. And with that, the idea you don't have is the voice you haven't heard. And if you recall at the very beginning of our snippet, as futurist thinking as a discipline, it requires us to take an outside-in perspective, and it requires us to hear from multiple perspectives of multiple stakeholders in order to get the best vision and understanding of what is coming down the line. All right, so let's do a quick, super quick connection circle. Now that you've gotten a bit of exposure to futurist thinking as a discipline, as well as the content, what it is, if you recall, we looked at these terms that describe how we think about the future. Go ahead and type into the chat if your terms, if they have changed at all, potentially, go ahead and type those into the chat about how you think about the future. If you have the exact same terms as when we started, that's totally fine. Perhaps the few exercises, though, have shifted your understanding slightly. Just curious to see how. Okay, Heather shared, I think I would add idealist to my list. Very cool. Also, Megan said idealist. Maybe your results from your futures thinking personality quiz inform your new terms. More persistent, less trailblazer. Thank you, Tom. Julian shared optimist, enthusiast, open-minded. I think it would be amazing. Okay. Would add open-minded and enthusiast. Fantastic. Thank you all. Okay. All right. So that was our snippet for today. I know it was very quick. We do want to share with you that we take your feedback and evaluation very seriously, and it helps us drive future programming decisions. So I'm going to just very briefly ask you to go ahead and click on the link that Kiki put in the chat. That takes you to the evaluation form. And I'm going to take us there as well. So you guys, let's see. I need to reshare my screen to show you just a quick demo of how to access the eval. So here we go. Yes, you can see my screen. Okay, so go ahead, navigate down to my photo, click my name. You answer 3 quick questions, and I'm just gonna write test here and here. Okay, go ahead and hit submit after you've responded to those 3 questions. Then, very important, we want you to record your attendance so you get the experience of today, you get credit for it. Click on that link, and it asks you to just fill out a bit of personal information like your name and whether you've done an event with us before. You won't see Futures Thinking Spotlight snippet under the session you attended under this question here, so I'll just ask that you write Futures Thinking, okay? was a snippet. Okay. All right. If you do have any questions, I am definitely going to stay on the Zoom call for a few more minutes. And I so appreciate you all engaging in this spotlight snippet with me today. I hope this was just a good kind of intro to futures thinking content. And I appreciate everybody for your participation. It's great to see some of you all again, and welcome to those of you who are just joining us. But thank you again, and have a great rest of the day.